Well,
I think if you're going against everything and you're saying, well, we need to strong arm everyone. That's not right. But at the same time, on the conference side of things, on David's side of things,
right.
Deal with the issues.
Yeah.
Stop trying to say, well, we don't need to talk about that, or we're just going to do this, and then everyone's left, they do a certain thing, and David do a certain thing, and then everyone's left going like, wait, what?
What was that?
What was that? We didn't do anything about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amnon and
Tamar. Hey, whoa.
What was that?
Yeah, what was that?
We didn't take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just stood there and did nothing. Same thing with conference. That's not right. We should not be just standing there doing nothing.
Well, so whether you're talking about our stance during COVID, whether you're talking about the United Nations
or
LGBTQ plus, lavender graduations, at La Sierra, whatever you want to talk about, abortions in our hospitals, anything, you name it. We have got to open the dialogue and solve the problem, not just hope it goes away and try to silence people who bring it up.
Yeah.
Hold them at arm's length. Don't talk to those people. And this never works. Doesn't work in the family. It didn't work in David's family, certainly. And it doesn't work in the church.
The conflict between good and evil, wars, crime, political intrigue, civil unrest, religious tyranny. Who controls history? Is there a meaning to life? Is God real? And is there a devil? That's what we talk about. This is the Great Controversy Podcast.
Welcome back to the Great Controversy Podcast. We haven't actually recorded an episode for, I don't know, we haven't recorded an episode for a little bit.
Couple weeks.
But that's because we were on someone else's podcast doing something, and then we recorded 2 in one day, and so we had one. Was it last week? Did we drop one last week?
We dropped one, I think, a week or maybe it's been 2 weeks.
I think it's been 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
But we haven't gone anywhere. We haven't disappeared. We're still here. So,
and we're framing right now, and you're busy with your business too.
Got lots of projects going on, lots of electrical jobs, and we're framing our house and stuff, so we're got a lot of things going on.
But it's good to be busy.
Yeah, but it's good to be back on the podcast too. And we're not going to stop. We may have a few weeks where we're not doing anything, or where we're not doing anything in terms of recording.
Right.
But we're always going to be here making episodes. So
we're not quitting.
No.
We're not giving up.
Nope. We're going to be always following a great controversy theme. We're not always going to be going in chronological order through the Bible necessarily and through history.
Kind of like we have been doing that. We've been going through Genesis.
Yeah. You guys probably
1 through 11. Those are pivotal chapters, but we're going to take a little deviation from that today and talk about the great controversy in really 2 realms. One would be the family.
Yeah.
And the second would be
it's kind of a relevant thing right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and then we also going to have, I don't know when we're going to do it, but hopefully maybe not next week, but the week after maybe. We'll have an episode the week after, and I think we might potentially have a guest on,
a special guest
talking about some very interesting stuff. So, and it's not relating to chronological Bible order of the great controversy. But
I think part of it's going to harken back to the episode.
It'll point back.
Creation.
Yeah, it'll point back.
This will be an expansion of one of those. In any event.
Yeah. Well, let's get started here.
All right.
So
I'll have a word of prayer.
Okay.
And we'll get right into our topic. Father in heaven, we do thank you for the opportunity to record this podcast episode together today. We're thankful for all the ways that you've blessed us over the last couple of weeks. Thank you for the opportunity to work with our hands and be productive. And we pray, Father, that you would make our minds productive today. Give us the thoughts that you want us to share. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So what are we talking about today?
So we're going to talk about the story of Absalom. And we're going to relate that to some things. some current events and some just personal things too.
Just
right?
general principles. So if you want to talk about the story of Absalom, Matthias, to me, you've got to go back to David's great moral fall with Bathsheba and then the subsequent murder of her husband Uriah.
Right.
And we're not going to dive deep into that today, but just to remind our viewers and listeners that if you really want to understand the rebellion of Absalom, you've got to go back to David's great sin. And it was more than one. His adulterous affair with Bathsheba was only part of that.
Right.
He tried to cover it up then when she discovered she was pregnant. He tried to cover it up by having her husband killed in battle. Now, and so you've got several things going on here. You've got David being consumed with lust and impregnating this woman, but then you have the whole issue of conspiracy to commit murder. And conspiracy is a crime, actually. It's a felony.
Yeah.
Conspiracy to commit murder is a crime. So he not only was he guilty of the murder itself, he conspired to have it committed with Joab. And Joab just very disappointingly went right along with what David said. Joab should have said, "There's no way I'm doing that." But he consented to follow David's orders and sent Uriah right up to the front of the battle and have him killed.
That kind of shows the kind of person he was. He just like Joab was too loyal. He was.
Can you be too loyal?
He was too loyal to the point where he didn't want to. I don't know. It's like he didn't want to. Like if David told him something, he's like, "I got you," without even questioning, which is kind of bad. That's not a true friend. A true friend is like, although, there was a time when Joab did reprimand David. So it's like, this is so bad, but it's like, when it comes to killing somebody, Joab, he's just like,
he was usually right. But,
it's like he didn't question it and he should have, but but here's the thing. Maybe he didn't question it for the same reason that David couldn't really answer, couldn't really say anything to his kids that were doing the things that he's done because maybe, obviously Joab, he murdered someone too eventually. And, he also killed Absalom, which wasn't probably not the best thing, right? Well, that's
questionable, but certainly David said
he killed Abner.
Yeah, he did.
So he himself was a premeditator of murder also. And so when David says, "Hey, can you get rid of this guy?" He's just like,
sure, you figured it out.
I've done that before.
Well,
and then
here's the thing.
Because
if Joab had been a true friend to David, he would have said, I can't let my master do this. I can't let the king commit this sin like this.
Yeah.
If Uriah had done something that was against the law, committed a capital crime of some kind, then the right thing to do would have been to have legal proceedings and, convict him, and then he would have been executed in a fair and just way. But obviously, when David's proposing this underhanded scheme, there's some problem here. It's unjust. And I think that's really going to become a theme of this podcast. To do even the right thing in the wrong way is wrong. Right? Okay, so you've got David's great sin, and time goes by, and you've got then coming on the scene, Amnon. And Amnon takes a liking to Absalom's sister, who was his half-sister.
That was a disaster.
Yeah, and this was a total disaster. And I want to read a little bit of this. We're not going to go into all the gory details. There's no need to do that. You can read the story yourself. However, there are some interesting things here that are harbingers of what is to come in David's family life. So, 2 Samuel chapter 13. I'm going to start reading with verse 1. After this, so it's very clear that we are talking about a situation here where whatever is happening now is going to be linked back to what happened with David. After this, 2 Samuel 13:1. After this, Absalom, the son of David, had a lovely sister whose name was Tamar. and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Now, you know she's a beautiful woman because beautiful women were named Tamar. You know what Tamar means? I bet you don't know. Tamar is a palm tree. And beautiful women were characterized sometimes in the Bible like palm trees, tall, stately. Okay. And the second verse says, Amnon was so distressed over his sister Tamar that he became sick, and it was improper. But now here's where the story takes a bad turn. You remember this guy? Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. So he was actually a cousin. Now, Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, why are you, the king's son, becoming thinner day after day? Will you not tell me? Amnon said to him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. So Jonadab proposes this plan where he would pretend to be sick and call her into the room, and then the bad things happen. So here's the question, though. And I know this is a question you probably asked when you read the story. Where's David?
That's a good question. Where is he?
Where's David?
He's not really present.
He's nowhere.
He's not, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know he doesn't know about his son and anything that's going on.
But he's obviously
his cousin over there.
Yeah, well, but his cousin sees it.
Yeah, but
His
David
cousin sees, hey, what's wrong with you, man? You don't look so good. What's on your mind? And he spills the beans.
What his father should have been asking.
Exactly. So David, in this situation, and it's just going to go downhill from here.
And we're going to talk about why that is.
Right.
Why David was not there and not plugged in.
But David was an absentee father.
Mm-hmm.
He did not have the conversation with Amnon that he should have had. He didn't notice what was going on with Amnon. He was self-absorbed. And I know everybody likes to say, oh, well, David committed great sins, but God forgave him.
Well, God did forgive him, and David repented.
He did.
But there were still long-lasting, forever-lasting effects of David's sin.
In his own family.
Yeah,
and also in the kingdom, too.
And then the kingdom, too, because it affected more than just his family.
Yeah. Okay, so without going into all the details of the story, Amnon assaults Tamar, disgraces her, and what happens after that? Well, let's read about it. Okay?
Absalom hears about it.
Yeah, so she goes home to Absalom.
Wait a second. So Absalom is like the half brother of?
He's the full brother of Tamar.
No.
He's a half brother of Amnon.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So Amnon was a different mom there.
Right.
Which tells you about all the joys of polygamy, right?
That really complicated things.
So great. No, wrong. Anyway, verse 19, after Tamar goes through this awful experience, verse 19 says, then Tamar put ashes on her head and tore her robe of many colors that was on her and laid her hand on her head and went away crying bitterly. Just imagine that now. This is one of the most beautiful women in Israel, and she's disgraced like this. And she goes home to her brother, Absalom, and her brother says to her, notice what he says. No, he doesn't say what happened. He says, has Amnon, your brother, been with you?
Yeah, so he already
knew.
He already knew that this was a situation.
He knew. How did David not know? No, David had to know, but he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. Okay, so she stays with her brother. He sees her every day. And what do you think is building in his heart?
Anger
towards his brother Amnon. Now, listen to David's reaction. Verse 21. But when King David heard of all these things, he was very angry, period.
In other words, he was angry and he didn't do anything.
He was angry, but he did nothing. And this is actually where a lot of fathers are today. They get mad and they do nothing. They get mad, they take no action. And so 2 years go by. Amnon and Absalom do not speak. 2 years.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. And what do you think?
So Absalom, he didn't do anything about it.
Not right away.
He didn't, he didn't lash out or do anything,
No, it was a controlled rage.
but he's about to.
But he's about to. Yeah. So in chapter 13, Absalom had sheep shearers, the Bible says, this is verse 23, 13:23. Sheep shearers in Baal Hazor, which is near Ephraim. So Absalom invited all the king's sons. That was a time of rejoicing. Wanted to have a little family get together. And then it says in verse 24, Absalom came to the king and said, kindly note, your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant. But the king said to Absalom, now listen to this, no, my son, let us not all go now, lest we be a burden to you. Then he urged him, but he would not go, and he blessed him. Then Absalom said, if not, please let my brother Amnon go with us.
Curious.
Now, if you were David, what would you be thinking? Well, the Bible tells us, and the king said to him, why should he go with you? Do you think David suspected something?
Because David was like, basically, why would you want him to go? You hate him.
You hate his guts.
And yeah.
But
so David
Absalom-
was just kind of curious as to what was going on.
But Absalom urged him, so he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. So Absalom, this tells us something about Absalom, by the way. He was determined and persuasive. Because originally David said, no, we don't want to be a burden to you. We're going to pass on that. But then Absalom urged him, no, come on. I want you to do this. And finally, he won David over.
Well, yeah, Absalom was very well. Yeah, in some ways, he had some character traits that David had.
Yes.
In that he really was able to get people to rally around it, which is David was able to do that.
Yes, he was. That's a good point.
That's why he had Jonathan
That's true.
from Saul's house rallying around him.
David was
So
influential.
the Absalom, same way.
And Absalom has some of the same characters. When Absalom, it says in verse 28, had commanded his servants, saying, watch now when Amnon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say to you, strike Amnon, then kill him. Do not be afraid. Have I not commanded you? Be courageous and valiant. I mean, these are inspiring words. These are words like a commander of an army would say. So, verse 29 says, the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. And all the king's sons arose, and each one got on his mule and fled. Because they were thinking, wait, does Absalom want to kill us all so that he can be the sole heir to the throne?
Right.
Right? So, now,
So David heard about it.
David hears about this. He hears a false report first. Someone comes to him and says, all the kings. And then we see this Jonadab character jump back into the story. That's very interesting. This guy that David basically took the place of David in terms of his relationship with Amnon. Now he comes back and says, let not my lord suppose that they have killed all the young men, the king's sons. For only Amnon is dead. For by the command of Absalom, this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. How does Jonadab know all this?
Because he's a sly, sneaky guy.
He's a perceptive person, but he used it in the wrong way. Yeah. Okay.
And then he tries to comfort David, and he's trying to say, hey, this is just don't be too sad here. It's okay. We can move on from this and whatever. He's like trying to make David feel better.
Yeah. Well, so of course, Absalom flees. He gets out of there. He bugs out.
He's afraid now because he's like, oh man, now I did it.
He goes to actually his grandfather, which is the father of his mother, and was there for a while, 3 years. And here's an interesting text, though, in verse 39. And King David longed to go to Absalom, for he had been comforted concerning Amnon because he was dead. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. Why was he comforted concerning Amnon because Amnon was dead? Why would that be a comfort to David?
No, because it's not a problem. Because he was a problem.
Okay. Why was he a problem?
Well, Just go back and read the story
Okay.
previously.
So he was a problem
problem.
because of the sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
But how did that implicate David? What should David have done in that situation?
Well, you should have dealt with it. He should have
Dealt with it.
Was
Okay.
Amnon the oldest?
I think he was.
So he's also the heir to the throne.
I mean, in theory.
Maybe theoretically.
In theory.
So the
Okay.
heir to the throne being that type of person,
Messing up.
That's not good.
That's
Number
not
one,
good. Okay, so you say David should have dealt with it, and I agree. What would that have involved for David? And why didn't David want to do what needed to be done?
Well, you would have had to. Well, here's the thing: you would have had to confront Amnon
Ooh.
about things
so that
that
there would have been a confrontation.
Yeah, David would have had to confront Amnon about things that he himself had done.
Okay, not exactly the same thing,
Not exactly the same thing,
but same category of sin.
yeah.
And you can imagine what that confrontation might have
And
sounded like.
and what David did was actually far worse because he murdered someone
Yes.
and took someone's wife
Yeah.
at the same time,
Right.
which is worse than what Amnon did.
Okay. So still, so you got David not wanting to confront Amnon. You know what that would have been like. David would have said, son, I'm going to have to bring you to justice because of what you've done to your half-sister. And Amnon says, oh, right, you're one to talk that.
Yeah,
I remember Uriah and Bathsheba. Where's your justice? David did not want to face that.
yeah. He didn't. He was afraid.
And he didn't want the people to say, oh, rules for thee, but not for me, huh, David?
Yeah, but the reality is that's what happens when you make choices. That's what happens when you make choices.
So because David had lost the moral high ground, he no longer felt like he could hold his sons accountable for the things that they did.
Yeah,
And he basically gave loose rein and allowed them to do whatever they wanted to do. And did not even bother to check in with them to see where they were at. So you have the situation with Amnon, where he didn't talk to Amnon, wasn't aware of what Amnon was dealing with, didn't talk it through with him. So he didn't do that. And then Absalom, 2 years. We never read that David went and visited with Absalom over those 2 years.
no, because he wanted to see him after that.
Yeah, he wanted to see him, but he was not willing to go sit down with him and say,
Because he knew he was going to have a talk.
well, he knew that Absalom would say, hey, Dad, like, what is your deal? You let my brother get away with this?
Yeah, so basically David was shirking that because he didn't want to, because he knew he did some things wrong there,
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't deal with it. So he didn't want to talk to Absalom because
Well, he knew Absalom
was going to point the
say.
finger and he was going to have some things to say to him. So he's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a bad situation when you've backed yourself into a corner, and then from that corner you then have to tell people to do something or not to do something. It's difficult, but it doesn't mean that if you've made a whole lot of mistakes, as like a parent, it doesn't mean that even if you've made a lot of mistakes as a parent, doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're like, well, now I'm not qualified to be a parent anymore. No, actually, you still are.
You don't.
But you
have
bring up
to
your
give up.
issues. Like, instead, David, his thing should have been, Amnon, listen, I've been here, done this. And
I've been down this road.
been
And you
down
don't
this
want to go
road,
down this
and you
road.
don't want to go down this road. I've made these mistakes.
Yep.
I'm still paying for these mistakes.
Yes. And
That's
I
what
don't
he
want
should
to-
have said.
And I don't want to see you suffer the consequences.
Yes, that's what he should have said. And he should have had that same talk with Absalom.
Right. Yeah. Absalom. What was Absalom? Absalom was vengeance. It was vigilante justice,
Yeah.
like the old West. Okay. Well, he did that. We'll deal with him. No trial, no investigation, nothing. We're just going to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And David should have gone to Absalom and said, now listen, yes, your brother Amnon needs to suffer the consequences for this. He stepped out of line, and we need to have a fair trial, and we need to do everything above board. He could have gone to him and said that, but he didn't.
See, I feel like, David, he could have prevented some of these things from happening. He could have prevented Amnon from
Yeah.
doing what he did,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
He could have prevented Absalom from killing Amnon, and he could have prevented Absalom from trying to take over the kingdom
Okay.
and inevitably losing his own life.
Well, so let's talk about how that went down.
So it really was, a lot of that was David's lack of being a parent. How much do we see of that today?
Well, it's prevalent today, extremely prevalent.
Yeah.
Dads who have lost the moral high ground because they've either, had affairs,
Themselves.
Divorced, remarry, divorce, remarry, or they're into pornography, or they're into some other aspect where they're cheating people financially, or, just doing stuff that they know is wrong, and they don't feel like they can hold their kids accountable because of those things.
Well, and if you're still involved in any of those things, then yeah, it is pretty hard to hold your kids accountable.
Well, especially if they are aware of it.
Especially if they're aware.
Because, they're just going to throw it right back at you. Like, oh, you're one to get me a lecture, Dad.
If you've moved, and I'm sure that was tough for David because he didn't exactly divorce Bathsheba afterwards.
No.
She's still
She was right there,
yeah, she was right there
living in the palace.
all the way the whole time. So he's like,
I mean, this is the mother of Solomon.
I know. So he's still, he's got this lady in there that he, every time, man, I mean, can you imagine David, whenever he looks at her, he thinks of the whole situation?
Well, and what about whenever Absalom sees her?
Yeah. I mean, he
Right?
just probably doesn't say anything, but he just
Thanksgiving
thinks
dinner.
of it.
I mean, we're kind of playing on words here, but Thanksgiving dinner, I bet that was pleasant.
And Christmas Day.
She's right there. And these sons of David are like, oh, Dad, really? You brought her?
Yeah.
I mean, and who you gotta feel bad for in this story is the ladies.
Yeah.
But in any case, let's now go to the next stage of the story.
Yeah, so we touched on, so we went through the kind of the implication, the one implication of this story.
Mm-hmm.
And that is David's lack of being a father to his family and how much that made a mess of things.
Mm-hmm.
And also how much his sin affected his family.
Yes.
So now what else could this story be? What else could this story be telling us?
Well, I mean, there are clear implications for the church too, and we'll get into that when we deal with the next phase. So Absalom, David allows him to come back through the influence of Joab, but instead of keeping Absalom close to him like he should have, he holds him at arm's length. And the Bible says here in chapter 14, verse 28, and Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem. This is after David permitted him to return from his exile there with the king of Geshur. 2 full years in Jerusalem, but he did not see the king's face. So he wouldn't talk.
Right.
Okay, now,
I always thought when I read that when I was younger, I always thought that was kind of odd.
well, it's very odd. Let me
It's
tell
like,
you
why
why
didn't
it's
he
odd.
bring him back. It's like he's trying to I don't know. It just seemed really weird.
Well, but then, what do you think's going to happen when you have somebody like Absalom
It's like David was afraid of what could happen if he
should have been afraid of what could happen if he kept him at arm's length. He should have been afraid of it because what kind of a person was Absalom? Was he gifted?
person.
Was he gifted?
Yeah.
Yes. He was handsome. He was gifted. He was ambitious. He was energetic. He had a lot of great qualities as a person. Qualities that draw people to you if you have them. And so there he is, 2 years, and the king is holding him at arm's length and basically has nothing to do. Worst possible decision. And finally, Joab went to the king and said, look, you need to stop it. And so finally he allows Absalom to come and see him. And there's an outward reconciliation between David and Absalom. That's in verse 33. On the surface, and I'm saying that very intentionally. On the surface, they appear to be reconciled. But it was after this that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now, who does that?
Someone who wants to to start sliding into place, into position
As
the next person in charge.
the next king. Okay, so he wanted to appear like royal.
My guess is that Absalom, in a way, was just kind of thoroughly discussing his father.
And it didn't have to be that way, did it?
No, but he was. But part of it is David's fault
I think a lot of it was David's fault.
because of the way he handled everything before this.
Absalom came to the place where he had no confidence in his father.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate. That's one of the saddest stories in the Bible to me, when a young man has no confidence in his father. He says, my father, I can't trust him to do anything right.
Mm-hmm.
And so Absalom starts working the system. Verse 2 says he would rise early and stand in the way to the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So it was whenever anyone who had a lawsuit come to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, what city are you from? And he would say, your servant is from such and such tribe of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, look, your case is good and right, but there was no deputy of the king to hear you.
Just sort of a lie.
Yeah, but it wasn't totally
a lie. Because
okay, so what happens when the head guy is on the gravy train, sitting back, relaxing? He doesn't want to see people. He doesn't want to be confronted with his sins. He's sort of reclusive. What happens to the people under him?
they start losing faith in him.
Yeah,
They start losing faith in their leader.
yeah, and they also start to act the same way. You know, when the guy at the top, the guy at the top always sets the tone in the company.
True.
Or in the nation. And when David was like this, you know, just procrastinating, didn't want to deal with stuff, hard thing, I'll pass on that. The subordinates also they played the same role. And so what Absalom said was not wrong here. He was pointing out that there were legitimate with David's administration. He wasn't wrong. And so then Absalom would say to these people, but I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit or cause would come to me, then I would give him justice. He was setting himself up as a substitute for his father.
So in a sense, Absalom is like doing the job that his father should be doing.
Right.
Because David was doing it sort of, but not well.
No, he wasn't. He was barely
doing it. And so Absalom that's what can happen is if a leader and if the head guy in the company doesn't do his job, sometimes there will be someone who steps up below him and start taking charge of everything.
Yes.
And that's what was happening.
And he becomes the de facto leader.
Yeah. So there was a true lack
Right.
for something, and Absalom started filling it.
Okay. So
He started winning the hearts of the people.
he did. And ultimately, we know what happened there. This ended in Absalom taking over the kingdom for a time. Now, of course, he didn't fully take over the kingdom.
No, he did not. Well, he couldn't. I mean, there were too many people that were loyal to David.
Right. But he did definitely cause some problems.
So how could this be?
Well,
We've actually been going longer than 22 minutes because I started this after, but
yeah. Well, let's talk about the church.
yeah. So how does this have to do with the church? How does this story line up with the church?
So there are times when in the church there's need of reform, and everybody can see. And
So
the leadership of the church sometimes gets in a condition where they're not doing justice.
They're not dealing with issues.
They're not dealing with issues. They are also maybe committing grievous sins. I'm not suggesting maybe like in the same way that David did or to Amnon did.
Right.
But there may be some of that. There may be adulterous affairs that happen.
Maybe so.
But I'm, more thinking of just linking up, getting us involved in things like the United Nations and so on.
Mhm.
or doing the bidding of the World Health Organization as we did, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So the point is this: to call for reform under those circumstances, is that wrong?
No.
No. Was it wrong for Absalom to say, if he could have said to his father, if he would have been granted the opportunity to say to his father, Dad, you're blowing it. You're making the family look bad.
How dare
The people do not have confidence in you.
How dare
Stop.
His son should tell him that he's doing something wrong.
Well, but that was kind of the attitude that David had. He just didn't want to hear it. He shut down the conversation. He just said, we're not going to talk about this. And whenever leadership in the church have that attitude, they are asking for problems.
Yeah.
As a leader in the church, you always have to have the humility to be confronted with things that you've done wrong.
Yeah. And I think on the opposite side of it, it's wrong to try to, to do something like Absalom did, which is to try and strong arm everyone, and force people to do things and use force as you would.
Well, he used some interesting tactics. Remember when I don't know how recently you read the story, but
I remember the story pretty well.
you remember when he set Joab's barley field on fire?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I do remember that.
This is the kind of person Absalom was. I mean, Absalom was not going to just, yeah.
He was gaslighting.
Yeah, he was, he was kind of doing what you did in Tennessee that time. Burn all that brush with gasoline and get the neighbors' attention.
Because it blew up.
It blew up. But Absalom was not somebody that you could ignore easily, who would allow you to ignore him. He was going to get your attention one way or another. And this is not a positive characteristic, by the way. It belies a dependence on himself rather than a dependence on God.
Here's what Absalom should have done. And you kind of already brought it up, but Absalom should have just kept using, not his actions, well, maybe actions, but he should have just kept on using his voice and speaking directly to David and saying, you got to do this, you got to fix this. I'm out here. These people they're trying to come to me with these things. If you don't deal with this, you're going to have problems because people are going to start getting frustrated. People are already frustrated with you. And if you don't start taking care of these problems, they're going to start coming to me. And if I take care of them, then we're going to have a problem. He should have been saying those type of things to David and saying hey, why didn't you take care of this? You need to take care of this. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. He should have been doing that instead of saying, I'm going to take over this whole nation. I'm going to kill so-and-so. I'm going to strong arm everyone. He shouldn't have done that. But what he should have done is kept using his voice to keep on speaking to David and to be an encouragement, but also a rebuke.
And he should have depended on God to do something.
Yeah.
You never read that Absalom prayed. He was using the tactics that people use: manipulation, conspiracy, lies. Yeah, force. Force, coercion. Those were the tactics of Absalom. And here's the thing. Was there reformation needed in David's administration and in David's life? Was there reformation needed?
Yeah.
Yes. Absalom was not wrong to call that out. He wasn't. But what made it wrong was the conspiratorial, underhanded way that he went about.
It was his method.
And his motives. Right? It was his methods.
His method
and his motives.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the king. He thought that and he says it to the people, that I were made judge in the land. There are a lot of people, Matthias, who believe that if only they were put into church leadership, that things would be better.
Yeah. What the reality is.
Go ahead. Give me the reality.
Just making that comment tells me that it would actually make it worse potentially.
It sounds like you're trusting in yourself.
And it's pride. It's pride too.
Yeah. I thank God that I'm not a church leader, general conference leader. because
Well,
I doubt that I would do any better than the gentlemen that are in office currently.
Well, and I just want to say this on this podcast because we don't, okay, I'm going to open a can of worms here.
Right.
Only like 10
Where's the can opener?
We got 10 minutes left. Here we go. Opening a can of worms that we're never going to be able to close. I don't agree with everything the Adventist Church Conference has done, but that does not mean that I ever think that I don't want to be part of this church or that, the Adventist Church is a lost cause. No, because there's also a lot of good people in the conferences. And there's lots of good pastors.
Amen.
And, so I am not never will you hear me saying, yeah, I want to join a different church or something. You're never going to hear me saying that. I'm never leaving the Adventist Church. Does it mean I agree with everything that our church has done? No, it does not mean that I agree.
There's some specific things
There's some specific certain
that
things
we feel are missteps.
so we don't want to be, we're not trying to be,
And those aren't doctrinal, by the way.
yeah, not a doctrinal thing. But we aren't trying to be some podcast here and we're like, anti-Adventist church but we're part of the Adventist church and that's confusing. It's like, no. We are Adventist and we are for the church and we are all about the church. And the conference, we need them. They're important.
Mm-hmm.
Our pastors are important.
Mm-hmm. And our current pastor, we have great respect for.
Yeah. We don't necessarily agree with everything. And I think that there's some things that need to be fixed. But
so here's the
we
thing.
can't, what I'm saying is we can't have the spirit that Absalom had.
That's it.
We need to just keep talking and we need to keep speaking communication.
Well, I think, and this is what would have, and we said this a minute ago, but this is what would have helped. If David had been willing to have the conversation
Sometimes.
with Absalom, if he would have been willing to have the conversations that he needed to have, things would have been a lot better. And that's what, I guess that's really our appeal
And if
to
David,
church leadership is, gentlemen, be willing to have the conversations that you need to have. Deal with the issues that you've got on your plate. Don't think that you can just sweep this stuff under the rug and bury your head in the sand and it's just going to go away after a while.
Mm-hmm.
It will not go away.
yeah. So essentially we have a rebuke for both sides of people that are on both sides of the equation.
Well, I think there are,
If you're going against everything and you're saying, we need to strong arm everyone. That's not right. But at the same time, on the conference side of things, on David's side of things,
right?
deal with the issues.
Yeah.
Stop trying to say, well, we don't need to talk about that, or we're just going to do this. And then everyone's left, they do a certain thing and David do a certain thing. And then everyone's left going like, wait, what?
What was that?
What was that? We didn't do anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amnon
and Tamar.
Tamar.
Hey, whoa.
What was that?
Yeah, what was that?
We didn't take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just stood there and did nothing. Same thing with conference. That's not right. We should not be just standing there doing nothing.
Well, so whether you're talking about our stance during COVID, whether you're talking about the United Nations
Or
or
LGBTQ+.
LGBTQ plus, lavender graduations, at La Sierra, whatever you want to talk about, abortions in our hospitals, anything, you name it. We have got to open the dialogue and solve the problem, not just hope it goes away and try to silence people who bring it up.
Yeah.
Hold them at arm's length. Don't talk to those people. And this never works. Doesn't work in the family. It didn't work in David's family, certainly. And it doesn't work in the church. And so I guess the appeal is twofold, really. One, to church leaders, don't follow the course of David.
Yeah.
Deal with the issues you need to deal with. Humble your heart, as we have to humble our own hearts.
And
every
accept
day.
that you've done, that you have, and accept that you have done wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Accept
the rebuke along with the encouragement.
Take, that's what I'm looking for, taking responsibility for your
Taking responsibility.
actions.
Being willing to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, to those who have cast themselves as reformers, we would just say this. It's right to call for reform, but beware that you do not step over the line to trying to gain something for yourself, whether that's a following or whether that's financially. You know, you can really build up a fair amount of revenue on YouTube,
Yeah.
right? Even your little YouTube channel, you know, you make a little money every month on that. But if you were really popular and putting videos out there all the time, you could gain a pretty decent income. And not only that, if people are sending you their tithes or offerings, I mean, offerings, I guess, are fine. But in any event, if you're calling for that,
Yeah.
you got to ask the question, whenever somebody says something to you, what do you have to gain or lose by saying this?
Yeah.
Right? What
That's kind
you're
of
telling me
measure of
this.
everything.
Yeah, that's a question I always ask is what do you have to gain by
'Cause-
advocating?
Because if you want to know what things are going on, follow the money, right? And
I mean, usually that's a
sad-
pretty good rule.
sadly,
And it's sad that it sometimes comes down to that, really. But I mean, I'm not saying the worker isn't worthy of his hire. He is.
yeah.
However,
We could say a whole lot more about that, but just enough.
yeah, we don't need to go too far into it. But you know, it's obvious that Absalom, in a conspiratorial way, was looking for a position. He was looking to take over the kingdom. He was looking to replace David. He was looking to have all the benefits that go with royalty. And I'm just giving a word of caution to friends of mine that are involved in calling for reform, and so am I. I've been calling for reform. I've written articles
We
calling
should
for reform.
we should always be doing that because Jesus did that. Many other,
So did John the
apostles
Baptist.
did that.
Yeah, all the prophets did. But the issue is this. The difference between the prophets and somebody like Absalom is this. The prophets had nothing to gain by calling for reform.
Right.
Their mortgages would not be paid off. They had no status that they were going to gain by reformation. They would have the satisfaction that they had done the will of God faithfully, and that was enough for them. But unfortunately, in these times, there sometimes are financial benefits that accrue to preachers who become popular, and that I think is unfortunate. Which is why, you know, you and I do this podcast, and when we certainly don't have a huge following, but
And we don't make a dime on this.
we don't make a dime on this, and we don't intend to ever make a dime on this. And you and I, you have your own business, and I have my own business, and we support ourselves by our own labor.
That's where we make our dimes.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully more than
And
a
that's
dime.
the way I want to keep it going.
Yep.
So, well, for those that are struggling in their own families with these sorts of issues, please, parents,
Read this story.
read this story.
Think about it.
Pray about it, give it deep thought, and then go and speak to your children. Say the uncomfortable things. Be willing to hear the rebukes that they may have for you.
Yeah.
And I've had to hear those things.
Be willing to say to your, as a parent, to your kid, be willing to say, I'm sorry.
Right.
I was wrong.
We made mistakes.
Because by being an example to your kids, they're gonna follow suit, and it will be a very good. It's very important for parents to apologize to their kids
Yeah.
when it's needed.
Yeah, we don't ever read that David ever got his family together and say, you know what, family, I've dishonored the family name. I've
hurt
done
everyone
wrong.
here.
I've hurt every one of you. Will you please forgive me and
Doesn't
hold me
seem-
accountable in the future? I don't think that ever happened, but it should happen
Probably
in
not.
every family where there is sin like this, or even just small things during the day. It's evening time is the time. Bring the family together. Dads can say, you know what, son, I have failed you as a father, but I want to be better. Will you help me? And as far as the church is concerned, we need to be always reform-minded, but we had better not be seeking for ourselves some great position or financial gain.
Right.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I think that's going to be it for our episode today. If you guys have any comments if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment, drop a like, and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But that's it for now. We'll see you guys in the next episode.